One of the things that you said that I found really interesting was this idea that you think that one of the saddest things for you, or something that you reflect on, is the idea that you don't think education has changed enough over the years, and that you think that education has pretty much stayed traditional, and this isn't right for you?
Yeah, sadly, probably the person in this room who's the longest time since I left school. And I think that in the time since I left school, 30 years ago, not a huge amount has changed. And I can go back even beyond that. Lord Putnam, David Putnam, is often quoted as saying, you can take a Victorian school teacher, put them in a modern classroom, and they'll probably do okay. Whereas if you took a Victorian surgeon, put them in a modern operating theatre, they'd probably struggle to understand what all the instruments and all the equipment was there for. The reason being that education, I'm generalising, and there are probably exceptions that people can cite to this, but in generality, education is still something that's done by one person standing in front of the room to say 30 people sitting out there on receive mode. It's something that is done too often is done to children, rather than children really have an active participation in. And something that we think Education Trust for Student Voice is very keen on, is that students should have more to say in what is being done to them, and in the way in which they're being educated.
Personally, just generally, I have in my own life, I don't think that school's been enough to encourage non-academic aspirations. I think it's more of, your core subjects and the other compulsory subjects are within schools. But when you have a student that, maybe wants to become a dancer or a poet, or something not seen as maybe ordinary or academic in that way, they don't have as many opportunities and as many routes to be successful in those areas. So I think the key there is, providing more opportunities where they can excel, but not necessarily through university. And I think that was one of the things that I didn't like about the education system as I was growing up, more so through my friends' experiences. I had a lot of friends who kind of pushed to go to universities, and as I see the routes that they've gone down, I think there would have been a whole lot better. They were told, okay, there's this apprenticeship that you can do, or this training course, practical experience that they can be successful through those routes rather than generally necessarily going into university.
You as a teacher can only run one after-school club after school. There isn't a maths extra tuition class that your students need, and there isn't a football a football club that your students need. You can do both, you can only run one. Put your cards up if you would choose maths. About the fact that the education system needs to be changed, needs to be transformed, and Daniel had a question about that. Do you remember what you asked?
Yeah, initially what Luke suggested was that the education system be changed and a revolution takes place in the sense that learning becomes the end in itself. My question to that was, how does learning become quantified? How do you validate when a pupil actually learns something? I find it difficult to validate without formal examinations or some form of assessment that we have right now.
Great question, thank you. So, panelists, that's a really good question. Luke, I don't know if you feel like something worth saving in our current system, or are we just all like absolutely not? So, is there anyone, cards, traffic lights again, anyone that believes that there is something of value in the current system as it stands?
Something about it.
Okay, so I feel like your backlash, I feel like there's a little bit of controversy in what I said. No? Okay, so Lizzie had a question to John, and it was about StudentVoice. Do you remember it?
You said how important StudentVoice was because students really need to participate in education, not just hear about it. And at my SAE school, I really saw that happen, and I really saw children really tell the department what they wanted to change, and the department took it on board. But I've been told by my placement school that year 9s don't have the confidence to stand up in front of each other and speak for 10 seconds without them just saying they can't do it. And that's even when the rest of the class have their heads in the desk and their eyes in the desk. So how would you encourage students who really don't voice their opinions to start doing it?
Yeah, it's a really important question. And I think it actually also links back to what we've just been talking about. If you have classes full of children who are being encouraged or maybe pushed to gain great academic attainment, but still leave the school without confidence to be able to speak publicly for any length of time, then I think there's something wrong with what's going on in the classroom. It's not addressing both those issues at the same time. Now, I'll try and answer that directly, but at StudentVoice we do training in confidence building, in campaigning skills, trying to help pupils to have a greater voice, be more effective in the way they use that voice. We also are interested in making sure that students aren't wasting those opportunities rather than asking for moving themselves, but actually creating campaigns around areas that might be useful not only to themselves but to school as well. So that you get to use your own pupil as more of a resource to develop in school and helping school go forward. A quote I hadn't seen before looking through your resource book here, very interesting from Bill Gates. It says something along the lines of your own dissatisfied customers are your greatest learning resource. And in your classes you may well have some dissatisfied customers for whom the education system isn't really working, for whom your lessons isn't really working. So if you speak to them and encourage them to speak up about what they're finding isn't working very well, then you may well be surprised by the results. But I think you have to identify those children who maybe do lack that confidence and find ways in which they can communicate, maybe inviting them first in smaller groups before helping and encouraging them to work with the big groups as well.
Has someone ever had faith in you beyond what you could see for yourself? Don't make a hold on. I don't mean in a airy-fairy lovely way. Explicitly, do you recall a time when you did not believe you could do something and it was someone else's voice, presence, constant that made you